Dean and Tyler Listle are registered investment advisor representatives. Investment advisory services offered through Brokers International Financial Services, LLC, member SIPC. Brokers International Financial Services, LLC, and Secure Retirement Solutions, LLC are not affiliated companies.
It's time for Secure Retirement Solutions with your hosts, Dean and Tyler Listle, fully licensed retirement specialists from Secure Retirement Solutions in Green Bay. Now, here are your hosts, Dean and Tyler.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Tyler and I will discuss topics that affect your retirement, such as investments, income planning, Social Security, and much more. How are you this morning, Tyler?
Good morning, Dean. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. Today we're going to be talking about scams. In a way, it's a little bit unfortunate that we have to talk about scams, but it seems to be a part of our life. They seem to be more frequent and prevalent each and every day. I'm not quite sure if it has to do with the society that we're in, the technical age that we're in, but we have a special guest here today that's going to help us out. He deals with scams much more than we do because it's part of his profession. Lieutenant Brian Amenson, he's with the Schwaben in Public Safety. Lieutenant, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm anxious to discuss the topic today.
Good. Well, to get right in, let's talk about some of the scams. It seems to be in our line of work, we meet with clients talking about money matters, retirement, and they always seem to bring up different types of scams. What are some of the scams that are most prevalent here in northeastern Wisconsin? Is there a certain theme to them? I mean, give me an example of some of them that you're seeing at the office.
At the current time, the IRS scam is being hit pretty heavy in our area, across the United States for that matter, because it is, tax time is upon us. That is being, frequently used. The other one is the grandparent scam. That one we see, periodic all throughout the year, and that's one that they feed on. They use the grandkids as a tool to access and try to obtain personal information.
Well, let's go back and look at the tax returns. We do hear that from our clients. They've heard about it, or unfortunately, they've been part of it. I mean, is it a process where they're trying to get personal information from somebody in order to get their tax return? Is that it?
Well, they're trying to. The key goal to any of these scams is obtaining that personal information. That Social Security number, those credit card numbers, maybe bank account numbers, routing numbers. That's what they're trying to obtain, and that's pretty common across the board with any scam. The IRS scam is heavy intimidation, threats that they're going to seize their home, place them in jail. Seize property, and it's the intimidation and threat factor that really alarms people.
Okay, and we do deal with the IRS because we do prepare taxes for our clients, and one thing we tell our clients is if the IRS wants to get a hold of you, first of all, they're not going to send you an email. That's number one. Number two, they're not going to call and ask you for your own personal identification. They know it, okay? So they're not going to ask you for your Social Security number, and typically they want to get a hold of you, they will use the old-fashioned first-class mail. Do you agree with that? It's typically stay away from the internet option when the IRS is getting a hold of you?
Absolutely. One key point of advice that we always give people is disconnect the phone call and then find the proper phone number for them and call them back. And that's across the board with any businesses. Is make contact with them. Most companies don't do business by making those phone calls out to people. And like you said, the IRS, your bank, they already have that information. They shouldn't be asking you for it.
Okay. Now, do you believe that it's mainly elderly people that are being preyed upon, or just anybody?
It's everyone. I think our older generation is a little bit more trusting, and I think that is, and also some of the topics that we'll talk about a little bit later is the reason that the elderly population is preyed upon a little bit more by scammers.
Okay. What about the grandparent scam? I know Tyler will be able to talk about this a little bit too, but I mean, what is that in particular?
Well, the grandparent scam, it's kind of a sad scam. They're using their loved ones to try to gain this information. It may go similar to this, where you get a phone call saying, your grandson Tony is, he's been involved in a vehicle accident. And they may actually have a voice that comes on that sounds like your grandson. And people ask, how do you obtain that information, or how do you get those voices? Well, Facebook is a great source for that. You have family videos on there. You have your sons or daughters, your grandsons talking on there. And there's apps, there's tools out there that you can actually mimic those voices and have them say what you want them to say. Now, does every scammer go to that level? No. But some do, and it can be really convincing. We always tell people, if you have a loved one that calls you and needs help, you know their phone number, give them a call back. Or if they say, I'm at St. Joe's Hospital, get the number for St. Joe's Hospital and call them back. Like I said, or try just to reach out to that person, because that person may be sitting at a restaurant 2 blocks down and they're saying they're in Mexico. You never know what the case is, and we want to make sure that information is valid before you send anything.
Yeah, and that just one thing I wanted to add in there, Dean, that exact grandparent scam that happened to myself. I was involved in that. My grandmother, she had actually gotten a call from someone trying to emulate me, saying they were Tyler and they were down in Mexico on vacation with some friends and got a bloody nose, and they needed, I think it was around $5,000. And my grandma, she was a little bit skeptical. But what she did is she didn't give any information, and she actually hung up and then called me right away. And I told her, nope, I was at the time over in good old De Pere, Wisconsin at college. So luckily she didn't give out any information, but I know exactly what you're talking about there. So shout out to you, Grandma, for not releasing any information.
Okay, what about any other scams that you've seen over the years or is starting to rear their ugly heads right now in northeastern Wisconsin? We talked about the IRS, we talked about the grandparent. Are there anything to do with, investments or health related, anything in particular there?
Yes, there's when we talk Medicare and health insurance, those are huge topics for everybody, and the costs and trying to, one of the things with health insurance is always difficult to compare prices, and it's a topic that's difficult for a lot of people to understand. So they know, the scammers know that as well, and they are reaching out and using their tools and the lack of understanding that a lot of people have with health insurance to try to kind of give assistance, but they're looking for that critical piece of information. So, a lot of them are educated. They know what, some of the things with Medicare, some of the things with health insurance, so they sound like they're educated about it. They may know information that you're not even aware of, but the end goal is that personal information that they're trying to solicit.
So that's a common theme, is the personal information. So everybody listening today, understand, do not give out personal information.
Right. And when I say personal information, I'm not as concerned with a home address or a phone number. What we're talking is a Social Security card, banking information. To be honest, an address and a phone number, anybody can obtain, on the internet in approximately 5 minutes. But it's the Social Security information, banking information, credit card information. That's got to be you and you only.
Okay, now sweepstakes. This is one, a couple of weeks ago, we had clients come in, husband and wife, and in addition to talking about their retirement accounts, the conversation just sort of went to a number of sweepstakes that he's in his mid-80s. They showed me the checkbook ledger. They don't do any online banking. It's the old school. They write out the checks. And they showed me a checkbook ledger of 5, 6, 7, 8 pages. Every single line in the checkbook ledger was checks written out to sweepstakes companies, because he keeps getting these offers saying, unfortunately he came in 3rd place or 4th place. Here's a little ring or a little trinket that he receives. However, if you put $25 back to us, we'll put you back into the sweepstakes again. Scam?
Well, if the trinket's worth the $25, then I guess you weren't scammed. But yes, I mean, they're feeding on that thrill of the win, and you're so close, and maybe the next time, and maybe the next time, and how do they keep luring you into those? And we see this with the lotteries as well. With you've lost your great aunt, Edna, passed away in Nigeria, and she had a wealth of money. She's got millions and millions of dollars. All we need is a couple $1,000s to get the country's origin of paperwork, to get that money back to you in your accounts so you can spend it for your family and your kids. That's a common one, and unfortunately, there's nothing worse for anybody, and especially us in law enforcement, to see someone work their entire life. All that income earning, so they have a nice retirement and can provide for themselves and maybe their family, and then lose it all to somebody on the other end of a scam, and that's sad, and unfortunately we see it way more often than we'd like to.
Yes. Well, I know just most recently here, we saw on the news, and the company wasn't identified for obvious reasons, but there was a very large Green Bay company that had a breach. So these things don't just happen in big cities. They can happen any place. I mean, right? Rural America, we recommend it's almost to the point now where anybody and everybody should go through getting some sort of protection for identity theft. And again, many people will ask, what's the reason for it? I believe we're not so much worried about a certain bank account being drained. We're worried about them creating a false identity for this person and the amount of expenses that can be racked up over their lifetime. Is that the case?
Absolutely. And that's why we always, we're going to probably discuss some of these tips later, but, it's always be cognizant of what you have out there. I have given presentations, and one of the things I do is I go around the room and ask, how many credit cards do you have? And it's amazing, some of these shoppers in town, and God bless the malls, love them, but they have 40 credit cards under different stores, and they haven't used some of them for several years, but how do you know what's going on in that account? And do you check it? Do you monitor that account to see if there has been transactions on it? So those are the things that you always got to be conscientious of what your financial outlook is. What do you have out there? What is your name linked to?
Well, since we're on the topic, then let's talk about some of the prevention tips. I mean, everybody's worried about the fact that they could be a victim of identity theft or a scam. I'm sure there are probably some very basic things that people can take care of. You just brought one up about the credit card. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But, as far as a checklist of items you should look at, what is probably the number one thing people should do to help prevent scams?
Well, the really basic, easy one is don't carry your Social Security card with you. We've all lost our purse, our wallet, whatever the case may be, and if that's in there, they have one of your key pieces of personal information, that being your Social Security number. You can open a Social Security number or credit card with Social Security number. That's one of the key pieces of information they're looking for. So that's a key one. That's very easy. Keep it in your, whether it be in your, vault at your bank or at home in a safe, whatever the case, don't carry that with you unless you are going to need it that day.
Okay, you bring up a good point. When it comes to your Social Security card, I was always amazed that the U.S. government would allow the Social Security number to go on your Medicare card. So anybody who has Medicare and has a card, that the little red, white, and blue card that shows Medicare Part A or B or both, your Medicare number is actually your Social Security number with a letter after it. However, I think starting next year, 2019, I believe, the government is no longer going to be putting that on cards. So it's about time, because that is just like carrying a Social Security card, right?
Yeah, that was a interesting decision by our government. Not one that anybody that has been in the profession of law enforcement or probably, financial management as well, we're all kind of shaking our heads at that one. And a couple years ago, their tax returns would come back with a number on the outside, which I believe was linked with your Social Security number. And yeah, that's a key piece of information that should be kept for you and you only. So.
Good. So we'll see that hopefully getting rectified here. Okay, so don't carry your Social Security card. What else? What other basic elements can we recommend to people to help prevent scams?
I'll just run down. We have, never give personal information over the phone or email. Any credible business they're going to solicit you, or you're going to solicit them. Most companies they don't call you to see if you want their service. It's typically the other way around. Don't use obvious passwords. As far as the internet, that's, if you have a cat named Sophie, don't have Sophie as your password. And a lot of people do that. Shredding all your documents. That is a key one, because you think of all your bills that you receive and the information that can be pulled off there, maybe a bank statement, maybe your 401k statement, and that has information on it that, again, you should only have and not, the general public. And if you don't shred that, you don't know where those documents are going to end up. It could blow out of your garbage can and go down the street. It could go to a recycling factory where, hey, somebody might be, looking to get a little extra income, and that may be obtaining personal information. Review your monthly statements. This is one that it's amazing how many people don't do it, and scams oftentimes will get linked to your credit card. And it may be, I was a victim of this myself. I had a $5 charge. It was approximately $5 that went onto my credit card. Now, a $5 charge on my credit card, we use our credit cards a lot, doesn't alarm me. But after about 6 months, I kept seeing this charge. So I looked and I called. And when I was ordering, it was a poster for my son's bedroom, I accidentally clicked a box which enrolled me into a coupon club. Now, I never received a coupon ever. So, like I said, whatever I enrolled in, I wasn't getting very good coupons. But like I said, it was a $5 charge, and I was able to recover a little bit of the money. But this was a scam hitting people all across the world. And who knows on the end how much that company made. But we were able to recoup a little bit of the money. But again, that's minor, but read your monthly statement.
Well, you bring up a good point when you talk about credit cards, too, because this started with a credit card. Credit cards, both a blessing and a curse. They're very convenient. However, they can get out of control. We see it a lot with people who let their debt get out of control. We need to get that back in control before they can go into their retirement. But one thing I've always told people, too, provided you treat your credit card properly, it's actually good to put some of your purchases on there, not only for convenience, but it also gives you the ability to dispute something a little bit more than if you paid cash, correct?
Absolutely. And that's, in our family, we pay almost everything via the credit card. Because of that extra line of security that you have with the company, that if there is fraudulent transactions, that the company will typically cover that. And like I said, I also go with a zero balance every month because I don't want to go into that credit card debt. But yeah, credit cards, they're a great tool if used properly. And that's the key thing there. The other thing is, when we go down, is keep a list of all your accounts, your account numbers, contact phone numbers. If you lose your wallet and there's 8 credit cards in there, do you know where those credit cards are linked? If you have a Home Depot credit card, if you call Home Depot, you're going to go through a bunch of phone numbers and phone calls to get to actually who you need to get to. Home Depot may be the name on your front of your credit card, but it may be ran by MasterCard or Visa, whatever the case. And write those 1-800 numbers down so you can quickly, in the case that you do lose something or think your identity has been tampered with, that you can make those phone calls to either freeze your card or close them out completely.
Okay, Lieutenant, before we go on to the next one, we're going to take a quick break here.
You're listening to Dean and Tyler Listle, investment advisors with Secure Retirement Solutions located on Allied Street in Green Bay. For a complimentary review of your current investments, or if you have questions, please call them at 920-347-9888 or go to their website at srsplans.com.
All right, we're back with Lieutenant Brian Amenson, and we are talking about some scams and some prevention tips. We covered a couple of them, such as don't carry your Social Security card with you, don't give away your personal information, passwords, let's not make them obvious. I know with passwords, I also saw an article once that 90% of those people who create passwords, 90% always start their password with a capital letter, always end it with numbers. So right away you're creating a pattern. Do you see that too? People have, as you referred to Sophie, you start with capital, end with numbers.
Absolutely. It's difficult. I know in my employment, I have to have probably on a daily basis approximately 10 to 15 different passwords, different programs that we have to enter, and I get it. It is difficult. They tell you to change them, make them as complicated as you can, and I understand fully 100%. It is difficult to maintain and remember all of that information, but make it as difficult as you can, and that's what we always tell people. I'm not saying do a 25-digit password for every account, but try to make it as difficult as you can and change it. If you change your accounts and a couple times a year, maybe once or twice a year, that would be helpful as well.
Okay, when it comes to the credit cards, you were talking about credit cards. How does somebody properly wind down from the 20, 30, or 40 credit cards they have? How do you properly wind down other than just cut up that credit card because it's still basically live, correct?
Absolutely. The key is to, that phone number on the back. You call that credit card and tell them you need to close that account. And they may have a sales pitch to try to keep that card open, but truly, if you're looking out for your whole welfare of your identity, you don't need 40 credit cards. Get it down to that, 2 or 3. I have 2 because one, if something happens where my account is tampered with and it does get, frozen or put on hold, then I have my other one as a backup. So, just but call those companies. Don't just cut them up, shred up the card, because that does not close that account. That account is still open. A lot of cards will close down, for a lack of use over a certain amount of years, but the best thing is to call that company direct and close it out. You can even make a notation, and if you're very organized, make a notation of when you did that, so you have a record of when that account was closed.
Good. What about a credit check? A lot of people, we talk to people each and every day, and they are more worried about their credit score and a credit check than they are their personal finances. So I think there's a happy medium. What should people look at when they're looking at a credit check?
It is good to do that on a yearly basis. The unfortunate part is some of our major companies that the government kind of sponsors and was also hacked into last year. And to be honest, I'm not exactly sure which one it was, but we got Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. I believe Equifax is the one that had the data breach.
It was.
And, those are the 3 companies. It's still a valuable tool to use. Let's face it, all of our accounts, we have our information is out there with not only with ourselves, but it's also out there in different companies. And if those companies are breached, some of that information can be obtained. So again, that's where it's important to know who has your information and who has access to that information, and if there is a breach, so you're aware of it, so you can keep extra tabs on what's going on in your finances. But do a yearly check. But again, your credit is used for mainly 2 things: a vehicle purchase and a home purchase. That's your credit score for the most part. And people get so absorbed, like, if I cancel a credit card, it's going to affect my credit score. Well, if you're not going to be buying a car or a home in the next year, it's really not going to affect anything. And people get really, really worked up about that credit score, and it's truly not always, it's not the end-all, be-all. It's a tool, but it's not something that you should be consumed with.
That's a good point, because again, we see people that are so consumed with that. They're more worried about that than whether they're going to have enough money over the next 10 or 15 years in their retirement, which always amazes me. Okay, any other items as far as prevention tips?
Yeah, there's one is don't isolate yourself, and this is more with the elderly population. You got to have somebody that you can trust and call out to. If we're widowed and we don't have that loved one in the house, reach out to somebody. If you have be skeptical. That's my next one is don't trust somebody that's calling you to get that information. You have to do your homework. And, do research. Research the companies that are soliciting you. Research them online. Research them by calling them. And go to the business. Most scammers don't have a business. They don't have the storefront, whatever. They're calling in their closet, or in their basement of their house, making these phone calls to you. And, like I said, go to the business and do the business there if you can. Don't be embarrassed. We see this a lot. People fall victim to a scam,
Good point.
And they become unbelievably embarrassed, and they're afraid to reach out and tell anybody that they were a victim. And they hope that, maybe if I send another, $2,000, it'll get better, and they'll give me some of the money back, and we'll be able to rectify some of this. And it just keeps to be bigger and bigger and bigger, and they get more and more embarrassed. They isolate themselves more and more. And then that's when we see these really severe cases where, they've lost everything but the property that they have with them. And that's sad.
Yes, it is. And I know in our line of work, we have to recognize if we see characteristics that are out of order for certain clients, anything from abuse to them being scammed. So you bring up a good point. So if we see things that look a little bit odd, we'd like to have that conversation. Many times we'll ask, and sometimes it has to be done legally through power of attorney, that they bring one of their children in with them too, so we can talk about these, discussions and see if it is, scam, if they're a victim of abuse, whatever it may be. Now, there's something else. It's not really a scam, but we've heard about it in the areas, and it sort of ties in, and that is like skimmers on gas pumps and so on. Is that something that people should be aware of, or is that a passing fancy?
It's definitely something that we should be aware of. Whenever you're going to use a credit card machine, or ATM, take an extra look at the machine. I'm not telling you to pull it apart. Don't yank on it so the machine breaks on its own. But their devices, some of them are pretty darn good. They really are. They do if these scammers would only do as much positive production for society as they do working to scam people out of their hard-earned money. It would be a benefit for society. But, these folks, they're pretty good at what they do. And for the average citizen to go up to a machine, and they may think it's all legit. And like I said, it is prevalent in our area. It's prevalent across the United States. For every action that we take to correct this and deter it, they're working just as hard on the other side to find flaws in the system and how they can gather information.
Okay. Lieutenant, as we start to come to a close here, there's one question that I want to ask you, and that is, if somebody feels they've been a victim of a scam, what should they do? I mean, a lot of people, we're telling people about these scams and how to help prevent them, but if they feel they're a victim, which direction should they start to go?
Well, we always say, as far as reporting it to law enforcement, if you have lost something, if you have lost money, or you have lost your identity is believed to be stolen, that's when you should be filing a police report, because that a lot of times your banking institution, your credit card companies are going to be looking for a case number that they are able to link their case with, and it may be an investigative case that our investigators, through Ashwaubenon or whichever agency is working on the case, and the credit card companies work together to find the suspects. A lot of these cases, unfortunately, aren't originated in the United States. They're originated, in Nigeria has been a hub for a lot of these companies, and the village of Ashwaubenon isn't going to necessarily send me over to Nigeria to walk the streets and try to find the suspects of the case. And that's the scary thing about the scams, is the money immediately, as soon as that is out of your hands, is gone.
It's gone.
Mm-hmm. And it is hit several accounts on its way to its home destination, which is not feasible, not able to be tracked, and it's very difficult. So, but if you are out, if you've lost your identity, you have lost financial income, that's when you want to make that police report, if you're going to be going through your credit card companies and your banks. Other than that, use it as information so you don't fall victim the next time. And like I said, it's something we're all going to be, we've all been exposed to it probably in some facet or another, and it's just do your research, be informed, and reach out to help.
Okay, good information on scams, good prevention tips. We have with us today Lieutenant Brian Amenson of the Ashwaubenon Public Safety. And sorry to say, but we're coming to a close. That's all the time we have this week. See you later, and hope you'll join us again next week.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Secure Retirement Solutions with your hosts, Dean and Tyler Listle, fully licensed retirement specialists from Secure Retirement Solutions in Green Bay. To get more information from Dean and Tyler, contact them at Secure Retirement Solutions on Allied Street in Green Bay. Call 920-347-9888 or visit them at srsplans.com. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Brokers International Financial Services, LLC. Member SIPC. Brokers International Financial Services is not an affiliated company.